Welcome, everybody, to episode 42 of the Dual Boot Diaries, the weekly podcast where two longtime Windows users learn to use desktop Linux daily. I'm one of your hosts, Adam Patrick Murray.
I'm your other host, Will Smith, and we are not Linux experts. But what we are is people who go through our experience using Linux daily, share it with you all, and at the end of this whole thing, next episode, we're going to delete either Windows or Linux from our computer and move on with our lives. Probably not also, but anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But listen, people have been asking us. We have questions all the time. Will you confront the final boss before the end of this journey? And the answer is yes. No.
What?
No, I didn't reach out to him. I mean, actually, I don't know if he would come on a podcast. But,
I don't want him to waste his time talking to us on our podcast. We don't have good questions for somebody like. But you know who we do have good questions for?
Who do we got?
Wendell from Level 1 Techs.
Oh, Wendell from Level 1 Techs. Everybody loves Wendell. I love Wendell. I love chatting with Wendell. So we're going to do a quick check-in with Wendell, kind of let him know what's going on. But then also we compiled a list of Linux myths that he's going to help us bust, because I mean, if there's anyone,
Smiths?
No, not Linux Smith. You're Will Smith, not Linux Smith. It's okay. Linux myths.
Oh, myths.
Yeah, like we're gonna bust myths. We should come up with a different name for that.
Like hit TV show Ancient Aliens.
Yes, exactly. But before we talk to Wendell, I have a little bit of news at the top, because a lot of people have been asking me about what I'm doing with Linux in the future. Obviously, you've got your new thing, which is linux.content.town.
Take control of your tech. Takecontrol.content.town. Both work for now.
Sorry. Yeah. Takecontrol.content.town. Linux.content.town. Whatever you do,
heavy Linux focus on making technology work for us again. So yeah.
Yeah. So what are your plans over there? Do you have anything up quite yet?
So F0 should be up by the time you guys hear this. Okay. And my co-host on the Tech Pod has been out for a personal matter for the last couple of weeks. And it turns out that has absorbed almost all of my other podcast time. So, but the episode 0 is recorded. I need to shoot some show art. So I need to get a good cover art picture where I'm looking thoughtful and.
Are you going to put a penguin anywhere on?
No penguins.
No? Okay. No, are you going to have a video version?
Look, I thought about driving out to where, yes, there's going to be a video version.
Oh, no. Okay, good.
I thought about driving out because the place where the Windows XP Bliss background, the original Windows XP wallpaper is like an hour drive from my house, hour and a half drive from my house. And I thought about going out and taking a picture in front of that, but then I went in Street View to see what it actually looks like now. And there's a bunch of houses and it looks kind of crappy. So I don't think I'm going to do that. But anyway, we'll figure something out.
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to it. I'm going to be right there in the audience. I have submitted a question.
You were the first one to submit a question. I think probably because you knew what the email address was before anyone else. Linux@content.town.
Yeah, Linux. So you're asking people to submit audio questions.
Audio, you can send text questions if you want, but audio questions are welcome. If you write a little summary of the question, that's awesome. But if you don't, that's fine too.
Oh, I didn't do that. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah, it's fine. I didn't ask people to do that. I hadn't thought about what a time saver that was going to be versus having to listen to a bazillion questions and download them. But it's fine. It all works out. This is a learning journey as we go. So
nice. I love it.
F0 will be up soon. F1 will be up shortly after that. After I get in the iTunes podcast, Apple podcast directory or something, they have to approve it over a period of a couple of days.
Okay, nice. Well, I do have something to tease a little bit. I mean, not a whole podcast, not a whole
series. Are you doing Linux stuff?
Yes, System 76 has updated their Lemur Pro laptop to feature Panther Lake, and they're sending me those devices. So
cool.
The news posted today about the launch. They're sending me devices. I'm definitely going to cover them on the PCWorld channel. Check out the laptop, because I've only ever used that one laptop at the beginning of this journey. But I still have a soft spot in my heart, and also I'm going to finally use this as an excuse to start using Cosmic. Like I know I keep talking about man, I really want to get back to Cosmic and try that out, because
this is an excuse for you to get into tiling. This is your entree.
I know. Yeah. Maybe this is. I mean, listen, we know somebody who is also into tiling, and that is Wendell. So let's just talk to Wendell. Let's call him up. We are here with the final boss, aka Wendell from Level 1 Linux. Wendell, you were our first guest on the Dual Boot Diaries, so I'm glad to have you on again.
I'm glad to be back. It's a lot of fun. It's been fun to live vicariously through your adventures.
I still remember the first time that I saw you after I've been using Linux. And I saw you in that bus ride on the way to the Intel event, and I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to talk to Wendell." I understood what he was saying. I might not have got it, but I was a little closer to your level, just inched a little closer.
His "Do you even grep bro" T-shirt finally made sense to you.
Yeah. So excited to have you on. I want to do a little check-in. Because at the end of the day, the reason I consider you the final boss is because I just want to make you proud, Wendell. I want to tell you how our journey's been, and hopefully you'll be like, hey, wow, you've done well, my children.
Yeah, the proudness is not the destination; it's the journey. It's the learning and growth. Or that's what they tell me anyway.
Yeah, I mean we've been on a journey, right, Will?
I feel like some of us have gone on more journeys than others, but yeah, look, it's been about 9 months now, I think, and maybe 10 because we started in August and it's July now, so
true, yeah,
that's 11 months if my math is right, almost 11.
Yeah,
but yeah, on this the penultimate episode of Dual Boot Diaries, I feel like I've learned more about computers in the last year than I probably have in the 8 or 10 years before that, just from the sheer brute force manpower of having to understand how the computer works better. So that I didn't understand how UEFI bootloaders worked before this. And now, thanks to, doing a series of tours through all the different options and deciding which one I actually like and for reasons rather than just aesthetics, I feel like I understand something better now. And that's nice. That's a good place to be in 2026 when we're kind of not supposed to understand how computers work anymore, it seems like.
How did we get here? It's like, it's been a journey.
Yeah.
Technologically as well, on the other side, like the engineering side of it.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I was distro hopping for a long time, and then I've pretty much settled on Fedora. It's just been my daily thing for a bit, even though I'm still curious about other things, other distros that are out there. For the most part, I love what Fedora brings to the table. Is that the wrong pick, Wendell?
No, actually, historically, I have been a super fan of Fedora, and a lot of our early content was definitely based around Fedora. I'd switched to Arch just because of some of the work some of the folks with Valve were doing. Around updates in Proton, and it's like I kind of wanted some bleeding edge things, and that was also the first distro that there was a couple patches to the Linux kernel that added some primitives to make it a little closer to what Windows does, which removed overhead for things like Proton. I was like, I'll give this a try, and I liked Arch a lot more than I thought I would. And then there was Cashy with their kernel, and I was like, oh yeah, Cashy. So I still have a Fedora workstation, but almost all of my time is spent on Cashy, and I'm also running Cashy on the HP G1A laptop. But Fedora, it's good, especially the rolling release type stuff.
Well, that's funny because that's where Will is. Will's on Cashy, and he's pretty much been there since the beginning.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a couple places in my life where I'm like, oh man, I don't know if rolling is right for these machines that I use once a week, and I want to basically treat as appliances. But on the other hand, I have an Ubuntu server in the garage that I have needed to update for probably 6 months now, and it's reached the point where I'm like, oh, this is going to be a scary upgrade when I do it. So, maybe forcing me to do the weekly updates, whether I have time to or really want to fool with it or not, is the right choice. Cashy, though, as a whole, for enthusiast stuff, for playing games, for getting stuff like DaVinci Resolve to run easily, has been an absolute just the bomb. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, DaVinci is a whole enchilada of complexity in and of itself, just because you've got codecs and everything else to worry about. And 90% I had a bad experience with DaVinci on Linux is not really related to DaVinci itself. It's all this plumbing and things that you still have to learn about. That's not perfectly transparent in terms of, I just want to run an application.
Yeah, I feel like running DaVinci and Neri, I had a bug where some X to Wayland library like XR&R or something like something weird had a bug, and it meant that every time I tried to drag a timeline in DaVinci just crashed, which I'm going to tell you kind of renders DaVinci unusable. And then that bug fixed. They fixed that bug. It came through down the pipe, and all of a sudden DaVinci's working great. I haven't had any problems since. And like that's kind of the Linux experience in a nutshell. Is like, hey, when it works, it's fantastic, and then sometimes it just doesn't work, and you can fix it. And sometimes it doesn't work, and you have to wait for somebody to fix something higher up the stream. I guess if you're me, you might be able to go out there and actually make those fixes yourself, Wendell.
No one wants to do that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of fixes, Will has done his own pull requests.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, look at that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we didn't. So I contributed. I did the easiest possible submission to some hardware support stuff by pulling hardware IDs and adding them to files to make my AIO water cooler show a temperature in HWMon and cooler control and all of those places now. So ASUS Ryuzen 3 AIO users, you're welcome.
The white one
Linux support,
right?
Thanks. Yeah, it's specifically the white one. Look, there are dozens of us. Okay.
Excellent. That's part of it.
Somebody downstream from that has now added support for the screen. So now apparently I can make the screen show a clock or the temperature or something. I haven't done the legwork to figure that out yet. But like in a matter of years, we'll have Windows parity on that particular ASUS water cooler.
It's dozens, yeah. Also, Will is in the early stages of making his own distro.
Not
Will
a real
OS.
thing. No, we're absolutely
it's
not
just
doing
for
that.
streamers.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
awesome.
Okay, so so one of the things I did a couple months ago was I wanted to get my second box stream machine. It's basically a small Intel processor with a decent GPU that can do video transcodes, and I wanted to move it off of Windows because it felt like Linux feels good for an appliance machine, right? Something that I use for basically one task. It's hooked up to a couple of stream decks and my audio interface. And it doesn't really, there's not a whole lot of actual interacting with it. I usually, I have a 15-inch portable monitor I just stuck on the wall over here. That's the screen for that thing. And most of the time I don't even turn that on. So I wanted something that was appliance-y for that. And I went through all of the stuff. I tried Ubuntu Studio. I tried some Fedora, different variants of Fedora that are seemingly made for this kind of stuff, but not really. And honestly, the problem was OBS support. OBS, the different distros do weird things with OBS components that I think are presented as plugins. So they don't do things like include the browser plugin or include the VLC playlist plugin, or you'll get the Ubuntu version of OBS and it's 2 versions back and doesn't include some key thing that you use on the day-to-day. So I ended up actually on Cache for it because it turns out I know how to use Cache and I know how to update Cache and I know how to work Cache. And it's worked really well. It's been I haven't had any problems with it. It works great with the capture card that I have in there, and it's been a real surprisingly easy experience. And now Adam thinks I should take that easy experience and make it really complicated and roll a distro. I think
I think you cut all the edges around the things that you don't need.
Oh God,
and
no.
You just make that your own distro and just say, hey, this does one thing really well. It runs OBS.
Well, somebody suggested something that sounded a lot easier than that, which is like, hey, here's a package list that you can basically give people to install almost as a here's what you need to make this happen. I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head because we talked about it a long time ago. But yeah, like that maybe I'll do that. That might be as far as we go with this stupid idea Adam has.
Do you have any ideas for Will Wendell on how he can help?
Yeah, any more extra work you can give me that will be heartbreaking and completely thankless and unpaid?
It turns out that you can roll your own distro with Fedora really easily because it has a lot of the machinery built in to do that.
Ooh.
And it's actually most people don't realize, but it's a little bit of an overlap offshoot from what they use for their testing framework. So if you wanted to build a thing to test a particular capture card and harness and make sure that all the plugins work, you can build that into a CI/CD system, and it's okay, here's the thing. But then you can also just repackage that as a distro, and it's fine. The package list thing on Arch is a perfectly reasonable way to do that, especially as long as the packages, sort of uh, maintain their cohesion. It used to be in the olden days when things were a little bit more Wild West, you would get pinned package versions. And it's like, here is this combination of packages that is known to work across like video codecs and hardware drivers and kernel version and blah, blah, blah. And you could pin everything all the way down to the kernel version. And then some kind soul would go through the testing and be like, okay, I've tested the new thing, here are the new pinned versions. And between the pinned versions, there could be 5 or 6 updates, but that either weren't tested or that had some minor compatibility issue for this specific thing that you're trying to do. So there is some machinery in Arch for doing that kind of thing. It's just not in the popular zeitgeist.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, and I guess the other thing I'm stuck on is that I'm nowhere near Will's expertise on this stuff. But one thing I do have around is a lot of hardware. So I've tried to be like, okay, how do I help people figure out hardware issues? If like, oh, hey, do you need access to X, Y, and Z motherboard to test against? I've got that. Like, how can I help contribute, Wendell?
Yeah, that's half of what I do on the forum. Is like somebody encounters something and it's like, oh, let me go test that and see if that works. Like, oh yeah, I have that board. Let me go see what's going on with that particular setup. And it's like, oh yeah, it turns out that's how I've discovered some of the really interesting bugs. Most recently, ECC memory on Threadripper not throttling properly when it's over temperature, so the memory will happily just bake itself, which they fixed.
Cook? Oh boy.
It's a great time to buy new memory, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's like, oh, my 96 gig DIMM that's now worth like $1,400 each is running at like 112C, and the system is supposed to have turned off at 90C. And it's like,
oh no. Can we talk about MediaTek's Wi-Fi chips and why they suck?
Yep.
Like specifically, I want to make sure I get the right one here. It's the one that's in this ASUS motherboard that I use, and it is the MediaTek. I think it's the 7927. Absolute garbage. It's terrible. Why are these bad? Why haven't we fixed these yet?
It's even more insane than that. So, like, my HPG1A also has a MediaTek.
Yep, that one's bad too.
Well, no, see, it's interesting. If you have the very exact, very specific kernel version, it is amazing. It is fantastic. But then things go off the road really quickly. There's 3 radios there, and like from an RF standpoint, it's a little bit of a challenge. And this is not an excuse or anything, but Wi-Fi being 5 gigahertz can also have like reflections that interfere with like the 2.4 gigahertz band. And there's also other hardware in the machine that can interfere with the radio. And so I don't think that MediaTek has a good like test suite or harness for every time there's a software update or every time there's a little change in how things is like put this thing to sleep and then run the Wi-Fi radios. I don't think that is well tested. Or things like we need to do like a DMA memory transfer. And the Linux kernel has changed how some of that works for efficiency or to improve compatibility with other hardware. And the MediaTek people just don't seem to test that at all or have any kind of automated testing to be like, okay, the kernel has moved on. And so if you run very specific versions of the MediaTek driver, which there are people on GitHub there's like 50 forks of the MediaTek drivers that address various issues. The HPG1A has an ISP camera. And the ISP bus, as opposed to USB or anything like that, and the ISP camera can interfere with the plumbing for the Wi-Fi. And it's like, this is a little bit hardware choice, and this is also a little bit like EFI and firmware on the device. But it's like, guys, come on. Because the mind-blowing thing is like the MediaTek radio is actually not awful. If you've got all the stuff, and I've done the Wi-Fi 7 testing with like MLO, it's like actually not terrible, but only in the little very narrow band of software, which makes it even more frustrating. Like I can understand if it was $5. It's like, here's my $5, but it's actually good.
Yeah. Well, and the problem I have with them more often than not is that if the machine shuts down or there's a specific series of conditions that like put the adapter to sleep in like a needs to recover mode. And then if you reboot while it's in that mode, it basically doesn't come back without a full power cycle. And like Framework put this in their 13-inch AMD laptop, the AI, not the new fancy MacBook Pro looking one, but the old school 13-inch one. Like it's wild to me the choices they've made on this stuff. And yeah, anyway, it's kind of a bummer. So
yeah, I think when the product was being designed, there was probably a bunch of MediaTek dudes in a room, and they said, "Yes, we really promised this time. We are totally not going to Lucy with the football, the drivers." And then,
but they also like the Linux drivers for most of those are blobs that are pulled out, like that are extracted because they don't release Linux drivers, I think, right? Generally. Yeah.
Well, they're also, I think that companies like AMD are leaning on them heavily because a lot of people are running Linux with these chipsets. And you have the suppliers that are just saying, we're not going to buy your chipset if you are going to be this level of reckless with support. And so with what was launched in the Framework and on the HP side of things, I'm given to understand that it was very much a this is your last chance. Like, you've got to have a good process around this, and they just haven't.
Yeah, that sucks.
Oh, well, you know what else sucks, Wendell? Are myths. And I think one of the things you can help us do is bust some of these myths before we wrap up Dual Boot Diaries.
It's like we say it all at PCWorld. You always be busting myths. It's
Linux myths.
Since the beginning.
Yes, Linux myths specifically. Yeah, very specifically. So we've compiled a list of myths. You might have some yourself, but I think we should just go down the list of these and figure out for once and for all, are these myths accurate or not, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the first one I've got on the list here is it's easy to switch. Even your grandma can do it.
It depends on what you do with your machine. I think that this is true mostly.
Depends. Like there's a world. I got this question on the Tech Pod on the Patreon episode this month, and I answered it there the same way I'm going to answer it here, which is everybody thinks that their grandma just uses the browser and they're opening the browser and they're going to whichever thing, they're going to Facebook to look at pictures of their grandkids, or they're doing the three things that they do. They're going to the Walmart website. Yeah. Playing Wordle, whatever. But then the thing that nobody considers is their grandma also has a 22-year-old a point and shoot camera that she plugs in to take pictures of her cat. And she has a slide scanner that's probably connected with a USB to SCSI adapter or something ludicrous from like 2005. And her printer is a dot matrix from 1987 that connects through a series of 3 adapters. And you have to fully assess all the aspects of her tool chain. Like, does she have some weird speaker that she bought at Walmart in 2012 that like connects through some bus that doesn't exist anymore on modern hardware? Maybe. Who knows? You got to find that stuff out.
It's funny because I think you've been stalking my elderly relatives.
Look, the number I have the same. My elderly relatives were in the same area of the country as you are, and they used to go to Sam's Club and buy whatever nonsense they saw that looked moderately interesting. And so it's like, oh hey, my security camera is using a 32-bit Windows application that doesn't work on Windows 11. How do I get this to run? And I'm like, dude, you need to replace the security camera with the dedicated hardware software interface. Anyway,
that's wild.
Yeah.
I have one counterpoint for you, which is okay. All of that's true, but I had Linux had better support for the printer than Windows. Moving from Windows 10 to Windows 11, it's like the mysterious problems with the printer went away when switching from Windows 11 that weren't there with Windows 10. And it's like, oh, this printer is just getting old. And then on Linux, it was like, oh, that's weird. The printer is now completely fine.
My grandmother, the weirdest thing my grandmother had, she passed away years ago now, but the weirdest thing she had was a USB phone handle. It looked like an old school, like just just like a USB, like a phone, the handle from a Bakelite phone from the 60s. And she plugged that in with USB, and she could use that to make calls on her phone. She could use that to do Skype with her relatives in the UK. Well, it was a desktop because it was a desktop. Okay. Like we wouldn't. God, don't buy your grandparents a laptop. But yeah, she would hold it up, and I was like, what is this thing? I looked at it. It was just an audio interface that flagged Windows as this is a communications device. Just like it basically showed up like a headset. And and she used that thing to make phone calls, and I was like, that's actually pretty baller. I respect that. Yeah, it was cool. It was red. It was fancy. It was like, I'm sure she got it at Walmart for $15 and some ads seen on TV crap or something. But anyway. Well, here's the other myth that I've gotten before is that it's okay, but if you switch your grandma to a different distro, there's one that looks just like Windows and they won't notice it.
I don't think that's really true. Unless they're just completely illiterate computer. Mint looks pretty close to Windows. You just put that on and, grandma just won't notice. It'd be like, hey, here's Chrome, Let's not lie to our elderly relatives. It's like, this is different. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. Well, what is the learning curve? What do you think is the realistic learning curve for people? For those kinds of relatives that have older, so I have the most recent example of this is I have a relative that has an HP Intel 7th gen laptop, and it's a thin and light. It's the battery is surprisingly in good shape. The battery is surprisingly easy to service. It's like 4 screws off the bottom. It's surprisingly repairable. It's surprisingly serviceable, and I think it's got like 16 gigs of memory. And it had become unusable for Windows, and then of course because 7th gen, no Windows upgrade, and so we switched to Linux. And there was like maybe I got like 5 or 6 calls the first couple of weeks, and this has been probably a year ago now. And I talked to them a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh, how's that going?" And they showed me all the stuff, and they had gotten there's a recipe program that they really liked that I think is based on FileMaker, like for Windows 95, and that was still running under their old machine. And it didn't work. I remember trying to help them set it up, and I was like, I don't. This might work under Proton. I don't know why this doesn't work. And they using some kind of a Proton GUI that they found in the Cache App Store. They got it to work. And so it's like, I just decided one day I was going to sit down and like figure out how to do this. And I showed him how to use the LLM to like talk to it. And like, he's like, oh yeah, after like an hour of talking to the LLM and understanding what was going on, we got the recipe program working. And then they were able to open these files that go back to like Windows 95. It's like, oh, here's all my old recipes and everything off this HP laptop. And it's like, we couldn't even, like Windows 10 got to the point where it wouldn't run an old FileMaker Windows 95 app. So that's amazing. Better. Okay, so your elderly relatives are much more tech savvy than mine. Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, man, I can see where that tree is from. Yeah. that guy's a cousin, and he's 65 or 66, and so he's like, I'm gonna retire. I don't really want to buy a computer, and it's like 7th gen. But the other thing that he said is like, this laptop is like, I could use this for years because the battery life is still reasonable. And he's like, this laptop is faster than it was when it was new. And he's on Chrome, and he's doing all the Chrome stuff because you gotta have Chrome, can't install Chromium. And he's like, he's every time I've talked to him, it's been, I can't believe how fast this computer is. I didn't have to buy anything. Well, 16 gigs of RAM on a even a 7th gen Linux machine is pretty good. It turns out, like I did an 8 gig MacBook that was 5th gen, I think, and that was a little slow, but it was mostly because of the 8 gigs, not because of the CPU was fine. It seemed like. I'm curious. Like I think that stuff is really interesting. I'm curious how much your neophyte users are using like the stores versus. Like, I assume they're not going and Googling the package that they need to install and then typing that, or if they are, they're asking like Gemini or ChatGPT or something like that for that info. Almost all the issues that I've helped users have been Flatpak or app image related, where somebody was just kind of half-assed doing it. It's like, oh, I've got Discord. Well, the issue on the Intel trip with Discord. That issue where it's like I can't save preferences, and it's like somebody clearly was just like, okay, I can open Discord, I'm done now. And it's like, no, yeah. you're gonna have to do a little bit more plumbing there, guy.
Well, they finally fixed Discord and built an updater so that when you install just the normal Discord install now, it updates automatically and you don't have to do the thing where you're like, hey man, stop trying to update. It's not the auto update's not going to work. We got to wait until it comes down from the package repo, which has been a pretty good change. So shout outs to Discord, I guess.
Yeah. I'm definitely noticing a sea change, like just in the quote unquote unwashed masses on the level 1 forums. Sorry, unwashed masses, you know who you are.
Hey, we love the unwashed masses over here at Dual Boot Diaries.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that are not as angry as they have been historically, that there are differences. And they're willing to put in a little bit of work and help other users in terms of, well, this is what I did in that situation to solve this problem or get this app working, or here's a workaround that I found, or I can't install the Flatpak version of OBS. I have to install the AUR version of OBS because the plugins are messed up.
Yeah. I think there's I think there's two things that have caused that. I think one is we talked about this a lot, but I think the Steam Deck and the work that Valve has done to make games easy has kind of served as a gateway drug to make people feel some confidence that they can actually do the things that were previously really hard. I also think that it's a testament to how crappy Windows is right now that people are willing to jump through a lot of hoops to get free.
Yeah, it really is shocking the abuse that users have endured, and I think that also makes them a little bit more tolerant of some of the things that they encounter.
Yeah.
All right, Wendell, I got another one. The distro doesn't matter. You just get one, download it, install it, and run.
This is a tough one because there is a certain amount of truth in that, but also, when you pick a distro, you're also picking kind of a social cohort, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so you can pick, if you are super into multimedia, there are definitely choices that will make your life easier or harder from a multimedia standpoint. And I don't mean just like, I need to be able to play everything in VLC. I mean, somebody that is a power user with a bunch of different codecs and has hardware and video, like specific video capture cards, like, which kernels am I going to be able to support the Magewell DKMS driver on properly? And then all of the integration with Blackmagic. But don't forget, Blackmagic has hardware. Like, some of their render and broadcast hardware is legit bananas. And so sometimes you want to run that on their officially sanctioned distro, but other times you want stuff that's not in their officially sanctioned distro. And then so there's a little bit of truth to that, but it's a lie in its oversimplification.
Okay. Well, what about that? Yeah. What about the one that says there are too many distros? We don't need this many distros.
It would be nice if we could focus efforts on, focus down. It's like, oh, this is a fault with this. I'm going to fix it. And too often, the attitude that I see from the community, it's people in the community, like the graybeards in the community, the people that are really doing things, is that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. And I don't like that attitude. But you can fork it and go do your own thing.
And
well, hey, we don't say those words on Dual Boot Diaries.
Plus one distro, it turns out. This is the thing I like about Cache is because it's relatively new. There's not 20 years of troubleshooting cruft in the search backlogs. So when I search for something, I'm going to get something that's at most 3 or 4 years old, and that turns out to be really helpful. The other thing is, I got to say, the newer distros, no knock against. I'm not calling anybody out here because I've had amazing help from Debian people and Ubuntu people and Fedora people and everything over the years, but when you go and post a question, either in level 1 in your forum or in the Cache Discord or on the Cache GitHub, even people are super responsive, and it's when I posted a bug report on the wrong sub Cache project, they were like, oh, this seems like it makes more sense here, but tell me why you thought it should go here. Not, hey noob, we're closing this, you're in the wrong place. Right.
That's definitely the response of 5 years ago.
Yeah. So sometimes having the newer one is actually nice, even though it's and the other hardware stuff is convenient too. So anyway.
All right. Well, what about the myth that Ubuntu, Pop, and Mint are the best starter distros for somebody Oh, you're struggling with this one.
Wendell's making a face here for audio listeners.
That's religious flame bait. I'm trying to think. What is the best? What's the criteria for best distro for a noob?
I think it has to be pretty easy to install. So like raw Arch with the command line is probably, making your ButterFS volume is out.
Yeah.
It has to be easy to install. It has to be relatively bulletproof and give you better self-repair options than just kicking you to the recovery console when something doesn't work and being like, hey man, your computer's jacked. And I think it has to do the things that you want it to do, right? So I think like Debian with your pure only open source, only GPL2 stuff or GPL3 stuff is probably out because of that, because like most people do want Chrome and the things that don't fit into the licensing of the more kind of, I don't know, pure distros.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was also thinking about the installer and like how much work goes into the installer. I frequently do trip over, like I don't think Canonical does enough testing of their installer across middle-aged hardware, let's say. Not necessarily things that are bleeding edge, but not things that are, ancient. And
are you talking about like 4 years, 5 years? Like, do you have an age range or
like 3-4 years typically? I mean, you get so it can be newer stuff that was crappy when it was new, like the lower end, like the U processors or like the mobile chips that have been repurposed. I'm thinking about like small form factor Dell and HP and Lenovo systems, because those often have troublesome EFI, and sometimes it'll only boot at a lower resolution, or it'll boot with like monitor problems or things like that. Sometimes also there's weird NVIDIA compatibility. Like sometimes they'll have like a Pascal or Volta era GPU in those, and those are, it's like NVIDIA proprietary, but then there's also Nouveau. And I like what Cashy does, where it's just like, do you want us to like preemptively deal with the fact that you've got an NVIDIA driver, and so like the installer can download it and deal with it? And I know why Canonical doesn't do that, but I think that is a much more user-friendly option than Nouveau. I almost think the installer shouldn't even bother with any of that and just go for like the most bog standard Visa frame buffer installer. And hilariously, distros, like server distros that trip over those kinds of things that I trip over, like Proxmox, gives you just a full text option. It's like, hey, we can just do a full text mode installer, and I see no problem with that whatsoever.
And when you say text mode installer, it's not like the Arch installer where you're making all the choices and building your machine from scratch. It's like the old school Windows installer where it's just not graphical and not like it's running at 800 by 600 or something.
Yeah, it's very user-friendly, even for setting up complex RAID scenarios or complex ZFS scenarios. And this is also another place where Cashy really wins. If you are setting up, like snapshots, I think snapshots are a huge, awesome thing that Canonical is still sleeping on, where when you do package updates and things like that, your system creates a snapshot. And if your bootloader exposes those snapshots at boot time, that is huge functionality. That is fantastic. Hilariously, Windows 7 didn't really give you a direct exposure for this, but it had something called shadow copy, and you could do system restore and boot in, and there was like kind of this janky way of getting at it, but it is a first-class experience for the same level of snapshotness, for lack of a better way to describe it, on Cashy, and it's something you can do on Arch. Cashy has a good, nice, user-friendly GUI installer, but it just does it out of the box. If you pick, is it?
It's Limine System D. I think Refine does it automatically out of the box now, and maybe they've even added it to Grub. You might have to do extra work to make it work in Grub now.
The last time I installed it, I had to do extra work for Grub because I always go to Grub because I'm old.
Yeah.
But I have experimented with the Limini or Limini. I don't know how to pronounce it. And I was impressed by how well that worked out of the box. And that is amazing because it's like, oops, I've broken it. Click, and I've rolled back. And the little subtle thing there too that's amazing is like your home directory where you go as a user is snapshotted and versioned differently than the rest of the system. So if you need to roll back the system, it's not going to affect your home directory. Or if you screw up something in your home directory, you can go look and cherry pick and pull a file out of just your home directory. And it's fairly user friendly to do all of those things through the GUI. And the fact that it is not anywhere near as easy to do that on a canonical or an Ubuntu based operating system, I think is a huge problem.
It's the snapshot thing has saved me multiple times. Like if I had an update that went bad for whatever reason, like sometimes the fix was as easy as loading in the previous snapshot, switching back to that, and then running the update again, and it just works because like a package changed between the time the manifest was pulled and it was downloaded or something, right?
Yeah.
And like it feels as powerful as Time Machine did on Macs 15 years ago when they rolled that out. And you're like, wait, I can go back and get any version of any file that I have on my computer at any given moment. That sounds really nice.
Yeah. Windows users don't know what they've been robbed of because they had that with Shadow Copy and Microsoft has completely nerfed it. And there was never a good GUI for it, but it was there.
Let me tell you about OneDrive, Wendell.
Yeah, don't worry. All your files are just in the cloud.
Yeah, we'll just save them there. You can get them anytime. It takes 5 or 6 minutes to load that interface.
I love how the new zeitgeist with OneDrive is that, I deleted some files from OneDrive because it was, trying to take files from my computer and put them in OneDrive, and now it's deleted them everywhere, which is the exact opposite of what you would want in the design of a system. Like the stuff that we're talking about and the stuff that we actually want as users, it is literally the exact polar opposite.
Yeah, but hey, look, they'll charge you a really high rate for 2 terabytes of web storage, so you got that going for you. They're good at that part. What do you think about immutable OSs like Bazite for noobs, for people starting out?
Oh yeah, that is a great point because my brain wasn't even in that mode. Yes, immutability from like a troubleshooting standpoint is huge. Immutability for like helping users on a forum, the entire universe of things that the issue could be is dramatically reduced. And you can sort of reset the system and set up a test user. It's like, okay, create another test user called test, log in as test and see if it's broken. If it's not, we know the problem is in your home directory and not actually a problem with the system. Having the distro work in that way is huge for making a robust appliance. But it is not like all the pieces are not quite there for enthusiasts or people that really want to customize their machine to the nth degree. Like there are some facilities for doing that, but like I'm computer science background. I like programming and I want a sandbox to do all these things. And you basically have to do that in a container on that operating system. You're not gonna do that locally. So it's like, I want to run really willy-nilly. I want to basically nest inside my machine, but the architecture of that machine prevents any kind of nesting in the machine. It forces you to be deliberate about everything, which is probably good because it'll teach you best practices. That kind of a distro is probably the future because it's even more like for what we're talking about philosophically for the snapshots, but it's not quite there yet for anybody beyond a noob.
Okay. I think that's fair. What I was going to say, one of the other things that we didn't touch on is that one of the things I like about Cache is that they give you the choice of what desktop and Windows Manager you're using, kind of from the get go, as opposed to like Fedora where you download different versions to get KDE or GNOME and then you can obviously change those once it's up and running, but that's a little bit more of an advanced maneuver. How do you feel like that's like, do you feel like presenting people with a couple of screenshots and, hey, do you want KDE, GNOME, Sway, Hyperland, Neri, Cosmic? Like, is that a good thing you think for noobs, or is that too much choice?
For noobs, I think that's probably too much choice. Although if you're a computer science student or you're somebody in high school or like I'm thinking of like pre-teenage me and teenage me, it's like, that's amazing. I love it. Pour it on. It's like, I have no idea what I'm doing and I want to learn and this is going to be amazing. I think it's fantastic. On Debian and Debian derived distros, they have meta packages that you can install that do the things that you're talking about. So I don't even know, like there's the different spins, I guess, is an attempt to be more user friendly, but it's really, you're never more than an apt install away from those kinds of things. I noticed they got more brittle after systemd, and especially lately with systemd, because systemd has like the quote unquote display manager service, which is then a symlink to, is it SDDM or is it WDDM? And like that has not been well maintained. That has not been to like noob levels, because you have to like stop the service and disable it, which removes the symlink, and then you have to enable the service, and then there's a special thing in systemd that's like, oh, let me create the symlink for display manager to point to which display manager you want as a way of handling that, and all the edge cases that a noob might trip over in that kind of maneuvering is IMHO not well handled. And as a result of that, the fix was, let's do all these different spins of a distro, which is probably not the correct way to fix that problem. Whereas what Arch has done, or what Cashy has done, is a much more sane approach to handling that kind of an issue. And probably the most bulletproof way of handling that is the choices that you get in one of those immutable distros, where you can have multiple window managers installed and do that. Right now, I think the most noob friendly window management system that supports some of advanced ways of thinking is Cosmic. And because Cosmic handles traditional window management really well, a lot of improvements over GNOME. I'm going to get you a lot of hate for saying that. I'm sorry.
No. I think you're right. I agree. Yell at Adam though. He's over here on Team GNOME.
But tiling window managers. Honestly, I think tiling window managers are the future. And Babby's first tiling window manager to like understand and sort of rewire your brain into thinking about tiling and floating. Cosmic has got it figured out. They have a very clear idea of what it is they're trying to accomplish to elevate user interface with computers, and it is big or bigger than Windows when they did like Snap and Arrange and that sort of stuff with where you could rearrange your windows and do this kind of thing. I want persistent workspaces. I want to create a workspace that is like, here is my 12 applications that I have to live in, arranged this way. I want to hit one button and it's like, boop, I'm in production mode 7. Production mode 7 is this arrangement of windows on these monitors, and I'm ready to go. It's like, okay, production mode communication, boop, and it like opens up all of my email clients, and I've got my main client and the thing that I'm working on for email, and like maybe an area for reference if I have to go reference things while I'm doing email, so that it lowers the cognitive load that I have to deal with when using a machine. And like Cosmic does that as like and then you can get into like Sway and Sway Bar and Hyperlend and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I had to do a bunch of hacky nonsense to get that to work right in Neary by like timing my application launches so they didn't crash into each other. So that and the end result was, all I wanted was Discord to be first on the top monitor and Slack to be second and OBS to be third, and then and Firefox and Notion to be on the bottom monitor, and like it was a bunch of hassle to get there. It's funny, when we had the cause of the pop guys on to talk about Cosmic a few months ago, the one thing that they said was, yeah, when we put that switch in to toggle the workspaces from traditional floating windows to tiling windows, all of a sudden we were walking around the office and realized that nobody had any floating windows on their desktops anymore. And yeah, I totally feel that. That's honestly one of the things that's keeping me from going back to Windows more than anything else.
I think once noob users, once they experience that, it's almost as big as like the mouse. It's like,
yeah.
We there was a time in computing when the mouse wasn't a thing, and then the mouse is a user input device. It's like, yeah, the computer can just manage the windows for you. It's like, what are you trying to accomplish?
I use my mouse so infrequently when I'm just desktoping around now that I could be using a trackball and I wouldn't notice the difference.
Trackball, yeah.
It's not a positive. Per trackball, in parentheses, negative, Adam. Sorry.
I love it. Let's get to a couple more before you got to head out, Wendell. I think one that has gotten a lot of debate over the number of months is that rolling distros are less stable. Is that true, Wendell, or not?
I think at one time that was true. I don't think that's true anymore. And a part of that, I think, has been a cultural shift in terms of how DevOps and DevOps integration has been done, and more automated testing. And I think that is less and less true going forward, because you see bleeding edge distros. At least it seems plainly apparent to me that for at least some distros and some packages, the maintainers are using a lot of automation to help them with testing and integration, and AI tools to help write the tests, or AI to help launch and maintain the tests, and then like analyze the results that they get back. And that is leading to a much more stable ecosystem and stable combination of releases, because it's not just your package, it's also how your package interacts with the system. And so I think those packages tend to be a lot more stable. Now, is it true also that you have some of the point releases of Fedora that are insanely stable? Yes, that is also true. So the level of stability there is elevating in the same way. but I think that the minimum, the amount of stability needed for a minimum viable daily driven experience threshold has been exceeded at some point in the last 2 years. Will, you look like you're
No, I agree. Like, I think, like, look, my desire for stability on a server and my desire for stability on a desktop are two pretty divergent numbers. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'll take some jank on the desktop if I get like the newest feature in whatever software I'm running. On the server, I just want to I want to turn that thing on and not think about it until the power goes out, you know? So yeah.
That's true. I'm definitely right there with you in terms of intrinsically, I will probably not run a rolling release on the server, and if I do, I'm only updating quarterly.
Yeah. It's like if there's news about some breach or some hack, I'll update. But other than that, it's like every 6 months when I think about logging into that machine, I'll hit the button.
I've got one final one, but Will, do you have any others you want to address?
I think. Hey, Wendell, does Linux get viruses?
It can, yeah. The AUR thing was just an amazing debacle because the AUR. So to loop everybody in on the Arch user repository. Anybody can just make a thing and post a thing, and you own the thing. And then if you abandon the thing, somebody else can come in and take ownership. And so what happened is some bad actor came in and started adopting a bunch of packages and using that to deploy it. It's like, oh, there's an update to this package that I used, and it has malware. And sometimes it's benign. Like sometimes you have like just a utility or script or something that is in an AUR for convenience. It's fine that it's not updated, for years at a time because the underlying thing doesn't need any updates because it's, relatively bog standard low level thing. And thousands of packages were infected in this way. And there was a little bit of a hesitation. I would characterize it as a little bit of a hesitation. That may not be reality. That the response was a little delayed. It was like, well, no, this is a feature. We don't want to lock down the thing so that people can't adopt abandoned packages. But also you're distributing malware in the Arch user repository. So Linux was not really equipped to deal with that level of social problem, I guess, supply chain problem. And so I think there is a coming reckoning for supply chain for all things open source. And it is going to be not just distros, but also things like NPM for like JavaScript application development, and all of these all of this everywhere is overarching a supply chain problem. And we as a community have not got, I haven't seen an amazing design pattern for like, oh yeah, that's the solution. And so right now things are a little more dangerous in terms of accidentally installing something bad on your system.
I mean, we also had the thing a couple of years ago where it looked like somebody maybe state sponsored just started contributing to a widely distributed package until they became in part of the team, and then they ended up maintaining it and injecting malware in the packaging, right? So like yeah, it does seem like an ongoing, like a problem that the community needs to come up with a solution for. I don't know what that is. It seems complicated and scary.
Okay, Wendell, do you think there's any other final ones that you want to address before the final one?
Common Linux myths. The other one is probably like, I don't know, all the ones that are top of mind for me are all gaming and Steam Deck and Steam and Fortnite related. The thing that's like, oh, anti-cheat is going to be a huge problem. The thing that blew my mind is at Computex we saw Fortnite running on the RTX Spark on ARM, and Tim Sweeney has been so resistant to anti-cheat anywhere else, even though the anti-cheat runs and functions on Linux.
Yeah,
it just
not shipping anti-cheat on Linux at this point is a choice, not a. I mean, I think the Spark stuff is weird because do we talk about this on this show or did we talk about it someplace else?
We talked about it, yeah.
But it's weird because on the ARM side on Windows, there's no kernel access, right? Yeah. So
arguably a worse position than you get on Linux with Steam.
Well, yes, but also there's no kernel access for anybody on ARM on the Windows side theoretically. So theoretically that's more secure. I think this is the thing. I'm not saying this is my thing. I'm saying this is the thinking I've heard. The only people that really have an excuse for not doing this are the companies that do their own anti-cheat, like Riot and folks like that, who have to then roll up their own. They'll have to build a whole separate team. All the main commercial anti-cheats, including what's used by Fortnite, including what's used by COD, including what's Battlefield's its own thing now, I think too. But anyway, they all have commercially available Linux versions, and they could choose to ship those. They're just not. It's not worth the effort for them with the way the market is right now, which is fine. That's their choice.
So it is a myth that's true, but it is a political problem, not an engineering problem, which makes me weep for humanity.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the final myth for you, Wendell. This is the year of desktop Linux. And insert whatever year it is.
Every year it feels closer. If Microsoft continues on this trajectory, surely by next year. Surely. Well, I mean, we actually talked about this. Somebody had a question like, even if it's not the year of desktop Linux, they asked if it was the era of desktop Linux. And I kind of agreed with that. Like, yeah. What do you think, Wendell? Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. For me, like me personally, I am absolutely blown away by not just the momentum, but by how quickly a lot of the historic behaviors that I would describe as like toxic have eroded away. And we got there by being nice and not with like sort of the ham-fisted like, I don't know how to describe it in a way that will not be inflammatory, but there's like forced niceness and like forced community of conduct stuff, and it's like you can't just say, hey, let's be reasonable human beings to one another. It's like some people, you know, it's like, oh, I need more than that. And we have, like, in practice, we've actually just met the minimum of we have been reasonable human beings to one another, and I think that has accelerated things in a way that I had not anticipated. Like, the amount of progress that has been made is incredible.
It turns out if you behave in a way that is inclusive toward new people, then your community will grow. And if you are exclusive toward new people, your community will not grow. Weird.
Yes. But also, I would say that some of the programmed, it's like, let's be inclusive to new people, was weird and creeping out the new people, although not necessarily malicious. And there's much less of that than there was previously.
Yeah, there is definitely 100%. Yeah.
Nice. Well, listen, Wendell, it's always great to talk to you. And sure, Dual Boot Diaries is wrapping up, and I'm glad you've been a part of this journey.
Well,
and the final boss.
Wait. What about you guys? Like, what is, like, you've been living it? Like, what's your, like, let's, you know,
what have we learned?
What have you learned? Are you going to stick with it? Is it going to continue to be a dual boot? Are you going to format that Windows partition? Like, what's going on?
Well, you'll have to tune in next week to find out who's formatting which partitions. But
yeah, we have a whole final episode to figure that out.
Well, I will definitely be there for that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is, so I did this, the last time I did this for real was probably 2003 to 2004. And I wrote a blog, like I set up a movable type blog, and I wrote daily or weekly entries about how it was going. I'm sure somebody can dig that up, but it ended up being a Maximum PC feature that was like 5 or 6 pages long, and resulted in me wearing a penguin suit and having the editor-in-chief of the magazine dangle fish over me, like actual real. I was wearing a fake penguin suit, and they were dangling real fish, just to be clear.
As one does.
Yeah, look, sometimes you do weird things for magazine art. But that was a real struggle. Like, that was hard because it was the time I was running like Debian. Everything was new. Desktop was really raw still. It was impossible to get any of the applications, like the cross compatibility, even with like stuff like OpenOffice to a regular Office was challenging. And like even getting it hooked up to the Samba server in the office at the time was a pain in the ass. And this time the problems have been, well, the way I use computers now is dramatically different, right? Like I spend a lot more time using video calls and like the things like my webcam needing to work, and I capture video all the time, which is not a thing that was possible in 2003 without a really huge hardware investment. And for the most part, it just works, or you do a little bit of learning and then it just works. But the understanding isn't like learning to use Windows 95 in the 90s. It's more like, hey, you just learn how to search for the right stuff, or you learn the right prompts to ask your LLM if you're Adam, and then you get where you need to be. So it's been much easier than I expected overall. Is I think my big TLDR.
Yeah, definitely. Well, with that, Wendell, we have further journeys to go on. Linux will continue to be a part of the discussion, and we'll continue chatting with you in new ways. So
it's been exciting to be along for the ride vicariously, as I say. So good luck, and I think it's a bit of a community service sharing what your experiences have been, because I think a lot of people will be inspired to take the same journey, and it might not end up in the same place, but it's the journey that's important.
Oh, Will, I love talking to Wendell. He's such a fun guy, and like he can just go on, and like I could just listen to him.
We could do 24 hours of Wendell sometime. I'm sure that's doable. I'm sure he could make that happen. Just sit down,
right?
Just it's like 24 hours of Le Mans, but with Wendell instead of car racing. So I'm there for that.
Yeah, I also wonder if people can get in the chat and maybe share some other Linux myths they've heard. Ooh. Like I think we covered some of the most major ones, but I'm sure there's other myths out there that we weren't thinking of. So, get down in the comments, go over to the Full Nerd Network Discord. We have a Linux channel in there. Put your myths in there. I wonder how many of these people are gonna either agree with Wendell or not, or have ones that we should have considered, but it was a good chat either way.
I wish I had phrased my last one the other way. I think I phrased it like you can get viruses on Linux. I should have phrased it Linux is inherently more secure, because anyway, but regrets.
I mean, same diff, I guess.
Yeah.
Just, different ways. Yeah, but we're wrapping it up. I mean, let's end the show. I kind of want to end with just a quick little thought piece, though, because, last week we asked for a bunch of questions and we answered a bunch of them, but there's one we didn't answer that has actually been sticking with me.
It's in your craw?
It really has. So it's,
oh boy.
It's from friend of the show, not Samar.
Okay.
If you were to what if your Linux journey, what would be different? And I've definitely, like, at first I was like, I'm not usually somebody to look back and be like, oh man, I regret this or regret that, or theory craft what things would have been like. But I do have a couple quick ones. Number one, I do wonder where I would have tried to do this Linux journey if it wasn't for this podcast. Obviously, there was a lot of impetus for this podcast, and I do think at some point I probably would have taken up this journey. But that's one of the great things about this podcast is that we wanted to do it for content. We were like, okay, well, we're going to air our dirty laundry, and it held our feet to the fire to continue to do it weekly. But if I didn't have this podcast, where would I have jumped in? Like what could have been, kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, I have no answer, but I do feel like, it would have happened at some point, but also I do wonder, like, would I have stuck with it?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the show.
I think for me, would I have stuck with it is the thing, right? Because like this gave me a good excuse to burn an afternoon or two a week on this, which I normally would feel kind of guilty about doing because I should be doing other things. And the fact that, we were doing this made it a valid use of my time. As a dad, weekends are sometimes less free than they were in my younger days. I think the big thing for me, like, it's funny, I don't have a lot of regrets this go around, but I also I wish I hadn't skipped straight to Cashy at the beginning, honestly, because I wish I had spent a little more time trying out some of the other distros and maybe I guess I went through most of the big desktop environments, but I wish I had done a little bit more time on other distros at the beginning, although it's hard to say, because like when we were trying to pre-create the Steam machine before it existed in the real world, was that last year or the year before? Might have been the year before.
Yeah, it's been a bit.
when I was testing all those like small form factor NUC style boxes with Bazite to see if I could get something that was performant enough at 4K that it made sense. Like I spent a lot of time with Bazite in that process, and it was a kind of pretty early Bazite. But between that and like the handhelds and stuff like that, I feel like I've spent more time with those kinds of distros. I wish I'd spent more time with Cosmic. I wish I'd had more time to spend with some of the other stuff that's out there. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the whole thing's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other big what if, and we talked about it plenty of times, is that because I've been doing a lot more video editing again, like I do wish I would have just like bit the bullet and started back on DaVinci, because that would have at least taken one of the major Adobe things out of the equation, which, you know, still kind of keeps me from using it in a lot of work scenarios, or using Linux specifically. Like the Photoshop is another thing, but I also, you know, I might be able to get off that. I don't know. But at least I was like, oh no, I had no excuse. I already knew DaVinci. I just hadn't used it in years, and it was way easier to just jump back into Premiere. Well,
you had inertia in the form of templates that are like daily things you use multiple times a day. That recreating was a substantial hassle. But also, I think the amount of time we spent talking about it, you probably could have recreated most of those templates in Resolve and Inkscape or GIMP or whatever.
There's still time. I mean, I definitely do want to figure that out, especially now that we have Brennan on the team, and you know he's doing the majority of the edits, so it's not just me editing anymore. Like, so some of that pressure is taken off. So I do want to get back to it for sure. But like that is definitely one I look back and be like, man, I had the opportunity to kind of like at least get off that piece of Adobe software. But you know, yeah, there's always something to change.
Look,
but
I'm going to go and tell you the pressure of getting off of Adobe software is a lot less when your company's paying for Adobe versus when you're paying for writing those fat Adobe checks. So, yeah.
True. All right. Well, either way, let's wrap this up. We've got one more episode after this, Will.
I can't do any more, else YouTube will come after us.
Yeah. It's going to be the big one. We're finally going to make the decision. I've got the delete key all cleaned up and polished off, ready to, you know, do some partition deletion.
I'm ready to pull the window out of my room and just seal that thing up. I'm gonna make this a dead no air box.
You've got a window in your room?
I have a window in my office.
You just never open it?
It has a fan in it, and then a bunch of black curtain over it, so that absolutely no light gets in.
I don't know. I just always imagine you just sitting in a dark like closet kind of thing.
I mean,
but, yeah, I've never been to your house. So.
Look, I'm going to go tell you from the angle at which the camera is visible is really nice and tidy and clean. Everything else looks like Gordon's workspace at his house. It's a disaster. So.
Okay, then I know exactly what you're referencing.
It's not good. I'm not proud.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm proud of this podcast.
Me too.
And I miss having you in the office. I'm gonna miss doing these podcasts, but I'm proud of what we built, and we've got one more left.
One of the things I would love to hear from people, you can post in the Linux channel, you can post in the comments. I would love to hear if you switched to Linux, if you tried this because of this podcast. Like if you got out and this was the thing that got you started, and whether it worked out or not, I would love to hear if you tried it and how it went, and where you're at now, and whether you're still at it or whether you've fallen back. Because I feel like anecdotally, like I was at Micro Center the other day and somebody stopped me and were like, "Hey, I love your podcast." And I was like, which one? Like, the Linux one.
You're going to have to be more specific.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And we talked about how they'd switched over, and like it's been a transformative experience was what that person said, awesome. Which I thought was really cool about. So
Cashy?
I can't remember. I might not have asked.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. Like it's a personal question. I'm not gonna. It's like hey, which of your kids do you like the best?
Bro? Yeah, which of your kids do you like the best? Yeah. All right. Anyway, I'm stalling. We got to wrap it up. Thanks, Will.
We'll see you next week, man.
We'll see you next week.